So Lumina got an exotic catalyst. I know some of you are like, whoa, who cares? Lumina sucks, man. And I get it. I understand. Not everybody can use Lumina because it requires us to think mid-gunfight. And that is way too much for us. We just want to slay. But Lumina is one of those weapons, when combined with certain subclasses, allows you to completely control a match. And this exotic catalyst essentially puts that level of control times 10. Essentially, guys, when obtaining this catalyst and fully masterworking Lumina, you will now gain 2 remnants on final blow kills instead of 1, which means double the benefits. Also simultaneously means double the ammo that you get back when absorbing those remnants. So first up, the exotic perk, Noble Rounds. Kills with this weapon leave behind remnants. Absorbing a remnant converts your next hipfire shot into an ally-seeking noble round and partially refills the magazine. Now, it refills it by 4, but obviously with 2 remnants here, you get 8 rounds back to your magazine. Needless to say, especially in something like PvE, you rarely have to reload. Now, upon shooting a remnant at an ally, and again, it has to be a hipfire shot, you grant each other the Blessing of the Sky perk, which increases weapon damage for both you and your ally that you applied the remnant to. So long story short, guys, I'm in heaven. I'm running around the map, getting kills, popping these remnants at my teammates, and now I don't feel like I have to save a noble round, right? That was the issue before with Lumina and me. And I've got a few other issues that we're going to get into in terms of the feel of the hand cannon. But a big issue was I felt like with just 1 noble round, I always wanted to save it. I wanted to save it for when I needed it. Now that you get 2 though, hey man, dude, I'm loaded. You want a noble round? Go right ahead, bro. You want a noble round? Sure. And inside of PvP, this buff is nice. We're sitting at almost 20%, roughly 19% at 10 full seconds. 10 full seconds to run around doing 19 to 20% more damage. Now, granted, in relation to other perks inside of PvP, this is not as good, and I get it. Matter of fact, if there was one thing I would want us to have, is a little more in that buff. Considering that it's an exotic, you also got to get a kill, then you got to land a hipfire shot on an ally. There's a lot more happening here than just kill clip, man. On top of that, there's nothing like somebody saying, hey man, why didn't you heal me? Like, come on, bro. I'm new to this gig. I'm sorry if I didn't get the heal off on you. But giving us an extra noble round there, oh boy, we in high heaven. I'm the best healer in the game. Nobody's dying on my watch. So does this exotic catalyst elevate Lumina to top tier S status? Inside of PvP, that 20% buff is really, really nice. And I know why Bungie's not giving it more damage than that. But had they gone more with that buff, considering that the duration there is 10 full seconds, not when you get the kill, but when you apply the buff to your ally, we probably could have had potentially some issues. I've seen Frostbolt do a few videos on it with sniper shots, one-shot body shotting, low resilience guardians. You could definitely pull that off with certain archetypes of weapons when you pair it with Lumina. And then when you get in a situation like I'm in, and I'm like throwing down these healing grenades, and we're all pushing with overshields and a 20% buff, my God, what do you do? What do you do, fellas? It's a hard thing to counter once that Lumina user snags a kill, and now when they snag a kill, they get 2 remnants for double the benefits for his team and his allies. So I completely understand why Bungie doesn't go above and beyond that 19-20% buff there inside of PvP. What's so crazy is how good Lumina is inside of PvE, as the buff inside of PvE is 35%. 35! That's the equivalent of Weapons of Light. A moving Weapons of Light buff on top of that. One that can be replenished throughout an entire strike or a gambit match or pretty much any activity inside of PvE with your fire team members. And considering that most fire teams are 3, we're not talking about the raid, 2 remnants, boom, 2 buffs, equally shared between the both of them. No longer do you have Joe in your squad asking you why you never show him any remnant love. I really think that Lumina is criminally overlooked inside of PvE, but probably the biggest contributor to nobody using Lumina, especially in high-end PvE activities, is simply because we can't slot champ mods. And that's something that's kind of like plaguing all of our exotics. But can you imagine just one Lumina user on a team, popping shots off, healing each other, giving each other that 35% buff? How nice that would be in every engagement just for those fire team members to take down those champions. So is this exotic catalyst the final piece to make Lumina a top tier choice? No, it won't stack with well. No, it won't do anything like stack with Weapons of Light. No, it won't be the best when it comes to damage phases, but when it comes to chaining through any engagement that requires a lot of movement, this is one of the best exotics to have to allow you to retain that buff for extended periods of time with literally no downside. 1 kill, 2 remnants, 35% buff for you and your fire team. An excellent exotic. And you see more PvE players crap on this exotic than PvP players. And honestly, inside of PvP is where Lumina really starts to show its weakness. Number one, it's got one of the worst in-air accuracy I've ever seen from a hand cannon. Now, I know most of our other exotics don't necessarily have the best in-air accuracy. That's inherently so. You can't put Icarus on them. A lot of us have gotten used to hand cannons with things like Icarus. So picking up Lumina and trying to land those in-air shots, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. At least not often. Not saying you can't do it. It's just noticeably more difficult than with the legendary and Icarus. But that's the same thing that plagues Thorn and other exotic weapons. And I think Bungie does this purposely to bring balance between weapons, because if an exotic had a mod slot, like we're asking, outside of just champ mods, pretty sure everyone will be throwing things like Icarus on their last word, or their Thorn, or their Lumina. And my God, who knows how crazy it could be. But that's downside number one. The other downside, which is equally as big, if you notice a lot of my Lumina gameplay, I am always aiming down sights constantly. And I'm doing this because the moment the game thinks you're shooting from the hip, or if somebody rushes me and I try to shoot them from the hip, if I happen to have a noble round in my magazine, those slow moving shots will just drift out of my barrel and 9 times out of 10 will not make contact, which is the equivalent of us shooting blanks. This results in any rush scenario. If you're holding Lumina, 9 times out of 10, especially if you have a noble round, you were at a disadvantage. A lot of us like to backpedal and shoot from the hip, especially like a shotgun runner, right? He's sliding, he's moving, he's doing all kinds of crazy things, but let me just back up real quick and just keep shooting from the hip, and I might be able to kill him before he closes the gap. That's not really a possibility with Lumina, at least not effectively. So unfortunately, my PvP players that are let down with Lumina, considering the lore that surrounded it, how it's supposed to be the direct opposite of Thorn. I know I'm probably botching all the lore, but I think a lot of people were expecting something to be the same level of lethality as Thorn. Lumina offers a level of lethality, but it's delayed. It's not instant, and it's not as lethal as Thorn. Thorn could potentially 2-tap, whereas Lumina can't. On top of that, it requires you to do things that you normally don't care to do mid-gunfight. For a mouse and keyboard user that has to turn around and hip fire shot at an ally, it's probably not too difficult. For a controller user, I would say this might be a little more difficult. And there are moments when your ally's just moving around and stuff that your Remnant, even though it does have pretty good seeking capabilities, completely misses them. And then what do you have? A floating Remnant, no 20% buff, your ally's probably dead, and a good chance you're next. Which is why if you play with Lumina, you almost have to incorporate the playstyle that you see here, almost becoming that dedicated healer, the support, the thing that no one in any game likes to be. Why is it every time you try to load up into that raid or that dungeon? Like literally guys, think about any MMORPG. Why is it that healers are always the one in dire need? That's because nobody wants to sit in the back, man. There's no glory there. It's not as fun. It's not as engaging, even though it's vitally important. Now, it may not be as important here inside of Destiny. A lot of people just wait for the recovery. They sit behind cover. And for the most part, Lumina has never really been necessary. But that is not the same as being garbage. I think there's a lot of use from this exotic. I think it has a lot of control factors to it. Giving yourself pre-buffs entering gunfights is absolutely amazing. Probably more beneficial giving each other pre-buffs than actually healing your friends, which is how I use Lumina. Notice I use my healing grenades with Divine Protection for heals and Lumina purely for buffs, which is probably not the way Bungie wanted us to use it, but it's the way currently, at least inside of PvP, that we're truly able to utilize it considering the time to kill values that we have inside of Destiny. So long story short, even with this exotic catalyst, if you're looking for a hand cannon to just pop shots off on people and absolutely wreck and win every single 1v1, Lumina is not the hand cannon for you. It's a good hand cannon. It's actually a pretty good feeling hand cannon, especially when you're aiming down sights. But that is not what it's designed for. It's designed to be more support. And this exotic catalyst and this masterwork essentially doubles down on that identity. So if you're all about that life, guys, go right ahead. Get this exotic catalyst. It's currently dropping randomly in Season of the Worthy. I think I got mine from a Crucible match. Try it out for yourself. And for my players out there that actually marries up to this exotic, you'll be surprised how effective you can be with it inside of PvE and in PvP, especially if you find yourself in fire teams. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.